All right, everybody, hello and welcome to another video here at Olio Awakening and Thunder Dragon Neigong. Today we're going to be looking at uh, another article concerning an important topic, and that is the role and place of alchemy in internal cultivation, in the practice of the internal martial arts. Taijiquan, uh, Baguazhang, Xingyiquan, and the related energy practices, Qigong, Neigong, meditation, yoga, all of these that would be considered internal alchemical cultivation arts. So before we get going, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification buttons, whatever applies to wherever you're watching this to be notified for further videos, instructional materials, and so on. Be sure to check out the website where we have classes, courses, informational material, and all of that. So, entering the alchemical worldview, a foundation for internal cultivation. As students step onto the path of Taiji Qigong, Neigong, meditation, yoga, or any other related internal arts, one of the greatest challenges that they encounter is not necessarily physical, but it's conceptual. These arts did not arise merely as systems of movement or exercise, as most of them are practiced today. Yoga being an excellent example, one that I often use because it's just so well known, but this applies to all the others as well. Whereas yoga, modern yoga, has really just been reduced to the asanas, the postures, and a little bit of the pranayama, the breath work, just as an exercise to stretch, to loosen up, to gain a little bit of strength. But this is not the complete practice. It is merely a preparation for the practice. It is part of it, a vital part of it, but not the entirety of it. And so too with these other practices such as Taiji and Qigong. Just the movement and the breathing is not the whole practice, even though it's often taught that way and practiced that way. So they were not just systems of movement or exercise. They were born within complete worldviews. They're living cosmologies that describe how the universe functions, how human beings participate in that functioning, and how conscious cultivation can transform both health and spirit. The idea is not just that we are exercising, but that we are working to cultivate all facets of our being, physical, mental, spiritual, and that we are working to understand functions and the processes of our bodies and how that relates to the functions and processes of the universe to harmonize as much as possible and optimize these functions and processes to live a better life all around on the whole. So, in the modern era, it is common for practitioners to extract the physical mechanics from these traditions while setting aside their philosophical and metaphysical foundations. Of course, modern society is increasingly secularized, irreligious, atheistic, very materialistic in their approach, and they just want things. Well, I'm going to do an exercise that's going to give me X results. I mean, to get stronger or to get in shape, to be healthier, to gain self-defense abilities, which is big in the martial arts. I just want to do the speaking just of the martial arts, I just want to do the self-defense part. I don't want to learn all the spiritual stuff that goes with it. It's very common with modern karate, jiu-jitsu, taekwondo, all of these things. They just learn the self-defense, learn the physical techniques and strategies, and develop the physical body to be able to perform those in the best possible way. And the problem is, while that is great, that's wonderful, that absolutely should be done, when you leave off the spiritual, the so-called esoteric metaphysical part of it, very often you end up with a bunch of injuries and actually tearing your body down rather than getting the real results that you could reach if you practiced both in harmony. I see this all the time when I'm dealing in my herbal practice with people who come in. They'll say, "Yeah, I train jujitsu." They're all hyped up and they'll hold their hand out and it'll be shaking and trembling like this. I'm like, "Yeah, I can tell you do. You're beating your body to death and you're not learning how to relax it and rejuvenate it." That's what happens when you just do the yang, the physical attack, aggressive exercise, and you're not learning how to do the meditation, the energy work, the Neigong that goes into replenishing and restoring your tissues and allowing you to better function. And this is why you have to have the two together. Just doing one or the other is going to lead you to bad results. It's going to reduce your longevity. It's going to cause you all kinds of physical problems if you just focus on attack all the time. And flip side, if you think you're just going to, oh, I'm just going to be spiritual and cultivate energy, this is the whole basis of the story of Bodhidharma Damo, who uh, developed the I Ching Jing and developed the uh, martial practices for the Shaolin monks. Because as the story goes, he went to Shaolin Temple and he saw that all the monks were just sitting around meditating all the time and they were sick and weak and falling apart because they just were trying to be spiritual and they thought they could cultivate energy, but they didn't do anything to train their bodies. So we see this a lot too, especially in Taiji, Qigong, and the internal arts, is people who are just weak and sickly and just not conditioned. And the fact is, you have to develop a body that is a capable vessel to carry the energy that you're trying to cultivate. Otherwise, you're not really accomplishing anything. So both sides are necessary. You absolutely must do the hard, grueling physical training, the techniques, the skills, but you've also got to be able to cultivate the inner side, the meditative side, the energy work. The two go hand in hand. They're two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other and expect to get the best results from it. So we don't want to separate the two. We want to combine them and train them together. Um, but oftentimes, as I said, in the modern world, they just want the physical. They separate the spiritual, the philosophical, because everyone's so geared toward materialism these days, which is a detriment in many areas of life. This approach is understandable. Life is busy, skepticism is widespread, and physical benefits are immediate and tangible. Everybody wants what's easiest. And although many people don't like to work out, just working out still is much easier than training the internal cultivation. So, they want the quick and easy, the flashy, showy results. They don't want to do the grueling, slow, silent work that was required to develop energy. Indeed, even simplified practice brings real gains, even at this surface level. Just the basic Taiji, for example, where you're just breathing and doing the forms, even that results in improved balance, mobility, circulation, stress reduction, all these things. And yet, still, something essential is lost when we stop there. If that's all we do, we will have great benefits, but not the fullness of the benefits. The internal arts were never intended to be mere calisthenics. I say this a lot where you've got people who just want to go and they want to relax and float and breathe, which is great for stress reduction, all the things I just talked about. But if that's all you're doing, you could make up your own movements and just breathe deeply and slowly, and you'd be fine. You don't have to do the actual uh, codified techniques that are done in Taiji and Qigong and these practices. If you're not doing them internally and you're not developing your vessel with the internal techniques, then just the external movements aren't really doing anything other than whatever you could make up yourself. If you really want to gain what these arts have to offer, you must learn to develop what these techniques, these specific techniques, are designed to develop. So you've got to go deeper than just this, I'm going to relax and float. That's fine as far as it goes, but it's not going to get you anywhere in the real practice. They were never intended to be mere calisthenics. Every movement, every posture in these codified systems is there for a reason, to effect a specific purpose in the body. They are alchemical disciplines, methods for refining body, breath, and mind into a coherent, harmonious whole. To access their deeper power, we must gradually adopt the worldview from which they arose. It's very important that we understand the cosmology and the framework from which these arts arose. And we don't just strip all that away and just do movements. And this is very important, and I'll show you why as we go along here. It is because intent is the driver of alchemical cultivation. A foundational idea shared across authentic internal traditions is expressed in the Chinese saying, Yi Dao Qi Dao. Where the mind goes, the qi follows. Now this has layers of meaning, but we're just going to go at the basic level for now. This single phrase reveals a great deal. It tells us that the intent, the yi, is not a passive mental state, but it is an active force that organizes energy, qi, physiology, and ultimately experience itself. Technique alone does not determine the results. As I said, just doing the movements isn't going to get you anywhere if you don't know what is happening inside the body. The outward postures and movements these shapes are empty unless we fill them with the proper internal mechanics and intent. You can have two people who may perform the same movement, yet cultivate entirely different outcomes depending on the quality of their awareness, their intention, and their understanding. So this is one of the reasons why true Qigong is exhausting and grueling effort. We look at it from the outside and we say, oh, he's just standing there, standing still. Well, a lot of people can't even do that. I have so many people who just don't realize how taxing it is on the body just to stand still, especially with how hyped up and overstimulated people are these days. They so often struggle to wind down and to slow down, to stay still. But even beyond that, people think, oh, he's just standing still, there's nothing happening. There is a world of things happening inside the body that we're monitoring and regulating and moving and adjusting constantly. So while we look still on the outside, the inside is always moving and balancing. And this is exhausting mental work, it's exhausting physical work. But most people don't do this when they practice. They're not even taught this. Most teachers don't even give this. They just say, well, just do the stance, do the breath, do the movement, just relax. We're not relaxing. We're releasing the tension and the blockages of the body. We're opening and closing. We're stretching and compressing. We're not just relaxing and having a good time. We're doing very focused, targeted work to reshape and restructure and adjust the qualities of the tissues and fluids in the body. So technique alone does not determine results. Without a guiding cosmology, intent becomes vague or mechanical. This is why it is important to understand where these arts came from and the traditions that surround them and gave birth to them. Because the more we have understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it, the stronger we can make our intent. If we don't even know what we're doing, it's very difficult to create an intent that is powerful enough to enact anything. When we have the right understanding, intent becomes precise, aligned, and transformative. Cosmology matters in internal arts. Cosmology answers essential questions that every serious practitioner eventually confronts. What am I actually cultivating? What is Qi? And this is one of the big questions. What is Jing, Qi, Shin? What are all these things? What are they actually? Are they just imaginary concepts? No, they're actual things. They're actual qualities. But it's important that we study where they came from and what they are so that we can have a proper understanding of the answers to these questions. How do mind, breath, movement, and energy interact with each other? Why do subtle practices produce profound internal changes? Why is it these things that don't look like we're doing anything, how does it actually have such great change in us? How does it bring about such great change? What is the long-term direction of this work? Where are we going with it? What's the point? What's the end goal? Traditional Chinese internal arts answer these questions through concepts such as yin and yang, the five phases, Jing, Qi, Shin, heaven, earth, man, and the Tao. Interestingly, when we step back and look across cultures, we find similar organizing principles appear again and again expressed through different symbolic language. Um, as I always teach, the truth is the truth, regardless of how you look at it, what word you call it by, what system you organize it through. In all ancient cultures, observed nature, observed reality, and came to certain truths. They may call it something different, they may use a different structure to talk about it based on their own culture, but when you analyze it, they're talking about the same thing. And we see this also with these concepts in the internal martial arts. One such system that's remarkably clear and concise comes from the Hermetic tradition. The seven Hermetic principles is the universal framework. The seven Hermetic principles are something that I always put forth early on to beginning students as a basic and easy to grasp framework for how we view reality. As I said, and as I always talk about, you cannot be a materialist and get very far in these practices. It's just not, it's not going to sink into you what you're doing. It's not going to create the proper intent within you to be able to really gain the full benefits of the practice. The Hermetic teachings articulate seven universal principles that describe how reality functions at every level: physical, energetic, mental, and spiritual. While originating in a Western esoteric lineage, Hermeticism, these principles map cleanly onto the internal logic of Taoist alchemy. Again, different cultures, same concepts. Qigong, Taijiquan, and yogic systems, all same thing. The seven Hermetic principles are: number one, the principle of mentalism, that the universe is a mental entity, not physical. Number two, the principle of correspondence, as above, so below, the famous axiom, probably the most well-known axiom of Hermeticism. This is the idea that everything corresponds to each other. The macrocosm is the same as the microcosm, and vice versa. Just as the heavens have their paths of rotation around the sun, so too we have the particles that encircle in the electrons, the protons, the neutrons, down at the micro level. Number three, the principle of vibration. Everything is vibration. We know this from quantum physics, quantum mechanics. Again, seven Hermetic principles, the alchemical way of understanding these things. This is also mirrored in modern physics. We're starting to come to the understanding that Well, these ancient people had it right the whole time. We got off on materialism for a while in our modern world and uh, thought that we didn't need God, that everything was just a machine. And now we're starting to realize the deeper we go into the study of science, oh, well, the ancient people were right the whole time anyway, which is uh, hilarious to me. Number four, the principle of polarity. Everything exists on polarity. Two things that are opposites, light and dark, good and evil, uh, these things are in actuality the same thing. They are one thing, they're just two poles of the one thing. You cannot have the one without the other. This is the yin and the yang principle. The principle of rhythm. Everything moves in rhythmic cycles. The principle of cause and effect. Every effect has a cause. The principle of gender, the masculine and the feminine, these qualities. And we're not talking about uh, just physical sex, but we're talking about the qualities of masculine and feminine that is present in everything. Taken together, they describe a universe that is ordered, intelligible, and responsive to conscious participation. This is precisely the assumption underlying all genuine internal cultivation arts, that it is a mental universe, that we are mental beings, and that we can participate in this universe and in shaping it. Without this understanding, everything that you do in these practices is going to be relatively hollow. So, from physical exercise to sacred self cultivation. When these principles are absent from practice, training often remains external, such as just stretching muscles, coordinating joints, memorizing movements. When they are understood and gradually embodied, that is, when these concepts are gradually embodied, practice becomes internal. We are refining awareness. We are regulating energy. We are harmonizing opposites, the polarities. We are aligning ourselves with natural law, which is the point of the Tao. The point of walking the path of God is to align ourselves with natural law, to be honest and pure and in harmony with nature. This is what we're trying to do because this leads to optimal health and outcomes across the board, whatever area of life we're trying to look at. At that point, Taijiquan ceases to be just slow movement and it becomes applied yin and yang dynamics. Qigong ceases to be breathing exercises and it becomes vibrational regulation. Meditation ceases to be just relaxation and it becomes conscious participation in mind-energy interaction. And for those who are interested in exercise science, um, just to show how the intent does indeed affect the outcomes we get. If you're familiar with different types of training that are done for different results, such as aerobics training versus strength training, or training for endurance versus training for hypertrophy to develop and build up the muscle. We know that there are different types of exercise that are done in different ways that will yield specific results depending on what we're looking for. And we can create structured programs to target these specific results. Different things that we do will activate different metabolic pathways in the body that will lead to different physical results. Well, in this same way, let's take just walking, for example. Everyone's probably familiar with the idea that we constantly see where you need to take so many steps per day to uh, maintain good health. Well, you can take those same number of steps, take whatever number we're talking about, take that number of steps in your house or walking around the office at work or walking on a treadmill or walking around the park or walking around the countryside out in nature. You can take those same number of steps, but they have found that your situation, where you are, and your intent, what you are doing, will actually affect the metabolic pathways that are activated even before you've taken a step. This is what I'm talking about, this mental reality and how the mind directly affects the results that we get from the body. So you can take 10,000 steps at your office. You can take 10,000 steps on a treadmill, or you can take 10,000 steps walking around the countryside. Same amount of steps. But those steps you took walking around the countryside, where you're actually seeing nature around you and you're going somewhere, is going to activate more efficient and beneficial metabolic pathways in the body and get you better results than walking in place on a treadmill or just walking around the office. This is the fallacy of the common excuse people give when they say, well, I don't need to exercise. I walk around the house a lot. I walk around the office a lot. It's not the same because the intent is not there. You're doing the same physical work, but it's not having the same result in your body because these metabolic pathways are not activated until your intent is activated. And this is what we're talking about here with these practices. Until you know what you're doing and why you're doing it and what is happening, you're not going to get the best results. This is science, even though our modern culture is conditioned to think of science as a materialist pursuit, a materialist thing. The concept of mentalism, the mental reality, is where we have come in science. It is what we are, the most current and modern studies in physics tells us that this is indeed a mental reality. And this is something that people need to come to understand, because the more you can activate this and make it work for you, the better results you're going to get. So setting the direction for the journey ahead, the purpose of introducing the 7 Hermetic principles at the outset is not to replace Taoist theory, but to provide students with a clear universal framework through which the deeper meaning of the internal arts can be understood. This is why I put the Hermetic principles as the first thing to look at, because it's just easier to grasp typically for a Western mind. Taoist cosmology is a very dense and deep undertaking to learn. It's not beginner friendly in the least for a Western mind. So taking these 7 Hermetic principles and learning about them and learning how they apply and doing that first really sets the stage and builds the groundwork so that when we start looking at these more complex, more foreign concepts, they become easier to understand. They fall in place much more easily. They give us a compass, an orientation toward what we are cultivating and how transformation occurs and why intent is so essential, so central to the work. So over the course of the next articles in this series and the next videos we'll be doing here, we will explore each of these 7 Hermetic principles in turn with particular attention to their relevance in Taijiquan, Qigong, Neigong, meditation, and related alchemical practices. So each principle will serve as a bridge connecting philosophy to physiology, showing why the two have to go together. You can't have one without the other. Again, 2 poles, 2 opposites are actually the same thing. Metaphysics is joined with movement, and worldview is joined with lived experience. This is the beginning of learning not just how to practice, but why the practice works, which is a huge thing that people have questions about and need to understand. And how to harmonize all aspects of oneself in accordance with natural law, which is the ultimate goal. So everyone, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Again, be sure to check all the links below. Check the website where you can find more articles, videos, instructional materials, classes, courses, consultations, and all that. And everybody, we will see you next time with the next lesson. Take care until then.